Okay, welcome back to this string of video tutorials. The next tutorial we are going to cover the concert database. It is creating relationships and lookups. So, objectives for this session. Firstly, we're going to create relationships that maintain referential integrity, and we're also going to create lookups that reference additional fields to allow the database user to make meaningful choices. Next, we're going to have a look at the end state preview, and this is what you're going to produce in the next couple of minutes. So we've opened up the concert database, and I'm going to talk to you about the following two tables. So first of all, the concert table now has a relationship created between venue reference and the venue table. So when I click on any of the rows, I press the drop down box, it not only lists the primary key of that table, but it also lists the actual venue name. Now this look down box or drop down box shows me all the venues in order of venue in terms of alphabetical order. It's not as meaningful to order things in the primary key because numbers really absolutely meaningless for a database user. They much rather use the name of it for their purposes. So the band reference as well, again ordered by alphabetical on the band name, not on the primary key of the foreign table. So moving on to the ticket table, I haven't completed concert reference because this is going to involve a query lookup, which we'll cover in the next video. The concert reference, however, the customer reference includes the customer ID in this column, then the customer surname, which is ordered alphabetically, followed by the customer first name, which is followed alphabetically. Remember, there are innumerable amounts of Jameses and Toms in the world, but you're less likely to find duplication on surname. And generally speaking, registers and any other list will be ordered by surname in the real world. Okay, so in addition to the tables and the lookups, what you'll have in your end state is the following entity relationship diagram. Now, when you enable referential integrity on your links, Access will input the one-to-many relationships. Unlike your cardinality diagrams or ERDs, the symbols that Access uses are slightly different. So whereas you'll have a 1, which will just be a line to a crow's foot, one-to-many, Access does a number 1 to an infinity sign. Now what you'll notice in this ERD, or this relation was not an ERD, it's the relationships in this database, is that the ticket table doesn't link to the concert table. That's because this link will be created in a following tutorial, which is slightly more complex beyond the scope of this video. So what we'll do is we'll restart this file and then we'll take you through step by step. So we've reverted our database to the previous form. There are no relationships in the database, and in addition your concert table as well as your ticket table no longer contains the lookups. So as a starting point, we're going to close all objects, because often when we have objects open it creates conflicts. So first of all, we're going to start with the concert table alphabetically and all that. Venue reference then. This column needs to point to the venue table so that when I click on it, a drop-down box appears with the venue name and the venue ID. So the way we do this is we go into Design View, you go to the venue reference here, click on this drop-down box here, and you go to the Lookup Wizard. Or you don't click properly. So you've got two options in this start screen. You've got I want the lookup field to get the values from another table or query, or I will type values in that I want. Now the second one here, just talk briefly about it, is if you've got a multiple choice question where you want to limit the user to a number of options. So for example, in an equality and diversity questionnaire, you might only enable a certain number of gender profiles. There might be ethnicity options available, such as white British or mixed origin or Asian or this, that and the other. So I don't know what the actual official categories are off the top of my head. So if you go to I want the lookup field to get the values from another table or query, we can move on. So again, we are referencing the venue table, so in this stage you press venue. You go next. Now we want the venue ID because that's going to be the value that's inputted into this field, but we also want to make it meaningful for the user. So we're going to take the venue name. We go next. So this is where you order it. We're going to order it via venue name so that the user can, think Barclaycard Arena, oh, that's got to be at the top somewhere, or Genting Arena, that's going to be somewhere kind of like the middle third. We go next. So in this instance, we want to unhide the key column, which is not recommended, but in our case we need it because it just validates the fact that this ID matches up to the Barclaycard Arena. So in this view here below, what this does is it actually, there goes the bell, it actually changes the physical appearance of the lookup. Now what I'd like to see is the venue ID as small as possible, like that, so long as you can see the caption, and the venue name slightly longer than it is now. Maybe leave about a centimetre worth of white space beyond the lookup value there. So press next, and it says when you select a row in the lookup field, you can store a value from that row in your database, or you can use the value later to perform an action. Choose a field that uniquely identifies the row. Which column in your lookup field contains the value you want to store and use in your database? So in this case it is the venue ID because that is what goes in the foreign key. Foreign key matches the primary key of another table. You press next. You want to enable data integrity and then press finish. Its table must be saved before relationships can be created. Save now. Press yes. So to confirm this, if you save it, well, if you go into Datasheet View, you can now click on Venue Ref, and like we said before, your primary key is saved in fixed width, and then your concert column there is a fixed width. What you'll notice is that there's hardly any white space on this area here. It's just a little tip and trick that if you maintain enough white space in the design view, you'll end up being able to see the entire column here. Okay, so band reference. Save that, close that, go into design view, and we're going to go back to the lookup. Now I'm going to show you a counterexample of what to do if you haven't determined the column widths successfully because you just skipped it by accident and you can't go back into the wizard. So you're going to go next for the first one. So we're doing band reference, we're going to select the band table, go next. We want the band ID and a band name. We're going to go next after that. We're going to order it via the band name because that's meaningful. Now, imagine, for example, you haven't done anything to this table, and let's say, for example, you've accidentally made the band name really, really small. We're going to go next. We're going to choose the band ID as the table value that's going to be inserted into the column. And press next, enable data integrity, and then finish. Save the relationships, save the table, and then go into design view or datasheet view. So venue reference works correctly, displays correctly, but band reference now crops off some of the artists, but the ID field is absolutely massive and uncalled for. So how do we rectify this? Go into design view, go into the band reference here, click on lookup, and what you'll be displayed here is all the technical data that is produced by the Lookup Wizard. So I'll just explain some of the fields. So display control. This is what is listed in the datasheet view of the table. So a list view, a list box would include specific values. So do you remember gender, ethnicity, things like that. And then you've got the combo box, which is what we're talking about here, which is the dynamically generated box with all the information in it. So the row source type is a table/query. You can actually edit SQL code pure into this slot here, or you can click on the ... which takes you over to like a query builder, and you'll notice that this is like summarized in the Lookup Wizard. So we selected band ID, we selected band name, and we only want to show those two, but we didn't show band ID. And you can create all sorts of funky stuff in this by add in extra tables, but we'll go into that later. So close that down and back into here. So the bound column, that's the column that gets inputted into the database is number 1, and if you look at your SQL, select band ID and select band name, well, it's actually referring to the first column there, band ID, so that gets added into it. So the column count is the number of columns that are going to be displayed in your lookup, as in, see there, your select band ID and band name. Those are the things that are going to be selected. Now column heads, what does that do? Well, if you press yes to it, I'll show you in a minute. Now the thing that I wanted to draw your attention to is the column widths. So here we've got 2.54 centimeters, which is an inch, funnily enough, weirdly, coincidentally. We're going to change that to about 2 centimeters. The second column here represents the width of the band name. So we're going to increase that to 7 centimeters. Now as a result of which we need to now update the list width. 2 plus 7 equals 9. If you reduce the list width to less than the column widths, what will happen is you'll get a sideways scroller, and you definitely don't want that. It's a user interface fail. Okay, so once that's done, don't worry about any of the other values there because they're not relevant to the scope of this video. So you can save your table and then go into Datasheet View. So I've gone to venue ref, that still works fine. If I go on band ref, we've ended up with a much more user-friendly interface. And you'll notice you've got the column IDs at the top there, which is quite useful in some circumstances. It can add a bit more, polish to your user interface. Certainly on forms when that gets displayed as well. So you can't actually select that, so that's an important point. It's not a value that is able to be selected, but it's good practice to include it because it's good user interface design. So we're going to close that, and I'm going to go through the ticket table. I mean, the thing is, with these tables now, we're getting onto a 12-minute video. These are quite easy to do. You just follow the same steps as before, and then you can create relationships for your concert reference and your customer reference. So I'll leave that to you then, and this is the end of this lookup and creating relationships video. Next video is we're going to create a complex lookup, which not only involves looking up to one field in another table, it involves looking up to a query. Cheers.